Hey guys, Sean here at the Gardener Center. So ever since we started doing our video series for this year back in January, I've been doing a lot of talking about plants, but I haven't been doing a lot of showing of plants because there's not a lot going on out here in the nursery in the dead of winter. That certainly changed this week. This week, like I mentioned last week, the very beginning of our super cold hardy early spring annuals and perennials have started to show up here in the nursery. So today I'm like super excited to actually be talking about real plants right in front of me again. So I'd like to take some time to tell you what came in and how to use them and what to expect from them. So stay tuned. All right, so I talked a bit about pansies last week. Now they're actually here. You know, this past Sunday night into Monday, we went down to 18 degrees here at the nursery and here in Darien. And if the wind chill wasn't 0, I'm positive it was close to it because that was the night we had that really wild wind, Sunday night into Monday. And that was exactly the kind of weather I was warning you guys against last week about our pansies and these cold hardy plants. Hopefully that's the last time we have that kind of a weather event. So we'll start up with the pansies, which we talked about a little last week. So again, cold hardy, don't like to freeze, but you know, this is their time, so it's time to start using them. There's 2 distinct different kinds here. So these typical big flowered ones, these are your regular pansies or bedding pansies. These little guys are violas. A lot of people also call these Johnny jump ups. Little pro tip here, if you like them both and you're concerned about the weather or how well they're going to hold up, these guys are much sturdier than the pansies are. They hold up a lot better. Their flowers aren't nearly as delicate. You get the same color palette that you get with the pansies, but on the smaller, little more delicate flower, but that's just a delicate look. These bigger flowered pansies, as pretty as they are, especially with the early spring weather, if we get wind and rain, their flowers tend to get tattered and they tear a bit, whereas these guys hold up really well. Something to keep in mind about the pansies, we already talked about their cold hardiness. There's a trade-off with the cold hardiness, not just with the pansies, but with this whole group of plants that I'm going to be talking about. As tolerant as they are of the cold, they don't like the heat so much. So these guys are going to be effective from now until Memorial Day, maybe the 1st or 2nd week of June. Once we start getting temperatures that are consistently over 80 degrees, they're going to peter out, and then you replace them with your summer annuals. And that's the trade-off with their cold hardiness, because you wouldn't be able to use your summer annuals now. So that's the trade you're making. Fun thing with these guys, the spring season, we're talking about maybe 2 months, 2.5 months that you're going to have these in your planters. Whereas when you're doing your summer planters, you're planning for 4 or 5 months of like really vigorous growth. So you can really pack these guys in tight when you plant them. And we sell the pansies are one of the very few annuals that we sell into little 6-packs. And in a few weeks I'm going to be telling you a lot more about why that is. But they cost a couple of bucks. They're 6 in a pack, and you could really, really pack them in. You know, a lot of people are tempted when they're doing their summer planters to pack everything so tight that it looks finished when you walk away. You can do that with your spring planter because it's kind of like the fall planter. You can really kind of make them look done when you're planting them because they're only going to be growing for 2 months and they're not going to be growing super aggressively like your summer annuals. So obviously pansies, violas, everybody's favorite, and these guys, they smell delicious right now. You should smell these things. They're fantastic. Some other plants here that I really want you to know about is these guys right here in front of me. If any of you are familiar with hellebores, you already love them. If you don't know hellebores, I promise you will love them when you get to know them. I love a lot of plants. I can't think of too many plants that are as praiseworthy as the hellebores though. They've got a lot going on. So number one, they're blooming now. They sometimes bloom in December, even January, depending on the weather. Common name is Christmas rose or Lenten rose. A lot of times you'll hear them called that. So number one, they flower really early. Number two, they're kind of a good pollen source for early pollinators. Not a native, but a good pollen source. They're also perennials, so they come back every year. Flowers last for a long time. Typically in cool weather, flowers. No, when I say flowers, I mean the actual flower. Once it opens, it stays for a long time because it's like being in a cooler or a refrigerator, so it's kind of preserved. When weather gets warm, that kind of expedites a plant's actual flower for how long it lasts. These flowers last for a very long time. And then behind the flower itself, there are these bracts. So once the flower petals themselves fall off, the bracts remain and they actually darken. So they remain effective for a couple months after the plant's done blooming. So that's another great thing about these. All right, so the list keeps going. Not only are they perennial, but they are an evergreen. So they stay green all year. So very common, not a very common feature in perennials is for them to be evergreen. And they also want to be in the shade. It's not easy to find shade perennials. You typically, that flower, typically you're talking about textures. These guys are going to give you flowers and texture. And by the way, one of the things I think is really great about them, not that they're not great enough already, hellebores are toxic to animals that eat foliage. So deer, woodchucks, rabbits are not going to touch these guys. So if you are a shade gardener and you have struggled with hostas in your shade, because deer love them, rabbits love them, woodchucks love them, you know that if you have hostas and you have animal problems. Hellebores are a great alternative because they're going to spread and they're going to colonize and they're going to live for a very long time, just like the hostas. And these guys, I mentioned Sunday night into Monday, we went down to 18 degrees here at the nursery with the wind. These guys were here outside on the bench in our parking lot through that whole event. They didn't get moved, they didn't get covered. These guys literally have antifreeze coursing through their veins. They have antifreeze proteins, just like if you guys have ever seen skunk cabbage growing in the woods that kind of melts the snow as it grows. These guys have the same sort of thing going on. These will freeze solid, so you can safely bring the hellebores home now. Nice thing, I mentioned that, you're planting for a short period of time. It's only 2 months. Sometimes people don't want to make the investment. I'm just going to wait 2 months and do my summer planter. What's nice about using things like hellebores, and also we got a bunch of bulb material in this week. I got some daffodils here. We've got tulips in. You can use these now in your planters along with the little 6-packs of pansies, and plant these in the landscape when you're done. So you're not throwing the whole thing away. You might throw away a few dollars worth of pansies, but your hellebores and your bulb material, they can go right in your garden and come back next year. So you can think of it as more of a long-term investment as opposed to just a 2-month investment. So there's that. Also, switching back to the violas real quick here, I almost forgot about these. So these are called, it's a type of viola. It's actually a viola and a pansy cross. These are called cool wave. So if you've ever done wave petunias, these guys perform in a similar way, only in a pansy form. So they're going to spread along the ground like a ground cover. These are great for cascading over the edges of pots and edges of boxes. One of the things you won't find at this time of year, again, because we're kind of limited by temperature, is you have your usual thriller, filler, spiller formula with your planters. But because of the temperatures and the weather, and our plant materials kind of limited, you're not always going to be able to find those elements. So a lot of times you might have to use stems like pussy willow or curly willow, that sort of thing, to get your height or your verticality in a planter. Lauren, our really talented container designer, is going to be talking more about that in a couple weeks. But yeah, these guys they're all here. I'm going to give the green light for getting all these in the ground right now. And I've been giving a lot of thought, as we move forward over the next 2 months, as we creep towards our growing season that begins in the middle of May. I'm going to take some time as we reach different temperature thresholds, and let you guys know when it's time to plant certain things. There's a lot to it, a lot of new gardeners, and there's no time when it's time to plant herbs or when it's time to plant vegetables. In a couple of weeks, it's going to be time to plant certain herbs, but there's one herb that I'm going to ask you guys to wait till Memorial Day to plant, and we'll talk more about basil later, trust me. But yeah, so I thought we'd learn a lot together doing that, because my greenhouse here at the nursery, we don't have walls. We have a roof. It'll keep you dry in the rain, but whatever the temperature is outside, that's the temp in the greenhouse. So when we present plants to you guys for sale, they kind of have to be okay with the weather outside. I mean, there's just so many sleepless nights I can handle every spring, so I have to be very careful with the material that I bring in, because if anything happens to it, it's on me. And also, I don't want you guys going home with things that are going to get damaged. End of the day, we want you to be successful. So in pretty much the way that I bring product in as I watch the weather, I'm going to present those plants to you. It's going to give me an opportunity to let you know when it's time to plant. It's also going to give me an opportunity to show off the plants when they get here. And even if you know a lot about gardening already, I promise you're going to learn a few things you don't know already. So I'm going to do that going forward. Of course, lots of other gardening topics too. But yeah, if you're in the area this week, come down and check out our super hardy cold-tolerant annuals and perennials. They're out here on our benches and we're ready to go. I'll see you next time.